Now, Kenya Airways is eyeing growth on its Nairobi-New York route as it marks its first anniversary flying non-stop to the US city. Since the launch of the route, Kenya Airways has ferried over 105,000 passengers. This has seen the carrier achieve an average cabin factor of 75% during this year. Now, KQ was the first in East Africa to fly non-stop into a US city. The national carrier has so far signed about 15 codeshare agreements, which have seen it steadily penetrate the highly competitive American market. Now, the airline is also currently pursuing plans to take up partnership opportunities that will ensure seamless connectivity to some of Kenya's world-renowned tourism destinations. Well, since Chairman of Kenya Airways, Michael Joseph, took the helm of the airline in 2016, he has been at the forefront of overseeing the implementation of a turnaround strategy. Let's find out from him how that is going. He joins us now in the studio. Great to have you in the studio with us, sir. Well, let's take a closer look at how KQ is doing right now. Been a tough year, a tough couple of years for the company. Now you have a CEO who's leaving in December, about 8 billion shillings in losses. But you've also launched this new route that we just talked about. You're looking at new partnerships. Is KQ's rescue mission bearing any fruit going forward?
Well, let me say the rescue mission is not exactly a rescue mission. I think what I came in to do, or actually when I was hired for this job, I did not know what my role was. And then I steadily found that what I have to do is to really, in order to build KQ and in order to grow KQ, we really need to look at Kenya Airways not just as an airline, a private airline or a publicly listed company for profit in East Africa. This is an anomaly in Africa. You know, it's just not possible for a privately owned company to really be financially successful in this market. All of our competitors, without exception, are state-owned organizations, all of them. And so when I came on board, I saw very quickly that Kenya Airways should not be regarded as just a company possibly making money sometime in the near future, but as a strategic asset of Kenya. We need to build this airline so we encourage businesses to come to Nairobi and to set up their headquarters here. So it's part of the strategic arm of improving the GDP of Kenya, of having an airline that is successful, which includes a better airport.
Right.
And this is why I've been pursuing this objective of putting the airport and the airline together to form a strong business that can financially use the leverage of the balance sheets of the two combined to leverage a new airport or an improved airport plus a enlarged Kenya Airways.
Right. But Kenya Airways might actually be state-owned soon. Can you give us an update on the progress on those plans to nationalize the airline? Is that happening? What are the discussions around autonomy?
So the nationalization process followed a recommendation from Parliament, from the Transport Committee of Parliament, which published a report which is approved by Parliament. And now the process is now in the hands of the Ministry of Transport to take this to the next step. The next step is to draft an omnibus bill, which not only nationalizes Kenya Airways, but also creates an aviation holding company, which will hold Kenya Airways, which will put it together with Kenya Airports Authority, the other training institutes of the government into one holding company. And that is a process that's ongoing at the moment. It requires a bill to be prepared, to be approved by the cabinet, and then go to Parliament for approval.
Right.
So we're in that process at the moment.
Right. And is there any idea as to what the timelines are?
Now I'm on national TV.
Right.
What can I say? For me, I want this to happen as soon as possible. But taking into account the normal political timetable, the difficulties of making this happen very quickly, I would say I would love this to happen within the next 6 to 9 months.
Right. Well, let's shift focus a little bit. We're talking about this new route to New York. It seems to have helped the company's financial position, cash position slightly. Give us a sense of how it's performing, and can we expect any new announcements in terms of your route network and fleet acquisition for the 2019 and 2020 year going forward?
Okay, first of all, at the route in New York, flying to Nairobi-New York direct route is probably on a standalone basis still has to make its contribution to the bottom line. But what it does do is brings us passengers from the US and feeds the rest of our network going to Africa even going to India, going to South Africa, and then vice versa. It feeds our network from other parts of Africa, as far afield as Nigeria, people coming to Nairobi to fly to New York. So it feeds our network and helps us grow the overall network. It's doing quite well financially. It's still the first year. It should be, it takes 2 years before you really see if your route is going to become successful. But so far it looks good. As you mentioned, 75% load factor. Business class is almost always full every night when we fly, and economy is about 65%. So overall, it's 75% load factor. As you know, we also we're flying to Rome and Geneva, so we will continue with that. Our next business on long distance, now talking about long haul, our target is probably Beijing, which is the new airport in Beijing, which we have a slot at, which we'd like to fly in 2020 or 2021. It just depends on the acquisition of aircraft, probably to more routes into Europe as well in 2021. Acquisition of aircraft, this depends very much on the nationalization process, because it requires a strong balance sheet in order to acquire new aircraft, both for the regional growth and the international growth.
Now, going forward, your current CEO, Sebastian Mikos, he's actually slated to leave at the end of this year. Is there any progress in finding a replacement? And I'll just throw in another question as well. Lots of competition in the market going forward. We have Uganda Airlines, Air Tanzania coming on board. How's that affecting your market share?
Okay, well, let me first tell you with Sebastian, with the CEO.
Right.
Yeah, we're on the final leg of recruiting a new CEO to take over the role from Sebastian. Not yet announced. We have no announcement yet. Hopefully in the next, I would say 60 days, hopefully we will make an announcement about that. On the competition, yes, with Tanzania coming, Uganda, Rwanda, all this is competition for us. I think to some extent, at some point, all of our neighbors will look and say, look, should we really be competing with each other like this? Should we not cooperate with each other? And we have had some initial talks about this. Has it affected us? Not yet. I think there's still quite a big market out there. And I think I don't think our concern is our neighbors' competition. Our big concern is the Middle Eastern carriers,
right,
because they are so strong, so much state sponsorship from them, and such big aircraft and such huge fleets, so they can amortize their cost over much bigger fleets. That's our biggest challenge.
Right. Well, I certainly have 100 other questions to ask you, but we do have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. Of course, that's Chairman of Kenya Airways, Michael Joseph.